I'm going to just kick it off, and then you and Sean can have a conversation around the whole issue of crypto for good and some of the basic issues associated with it. But I'm really interested in both of you and your journey to getting to crypto for good, because there's not a lot of people who are keen around that, and there seem to be some issues. So, Sean, what was your journey to this point, and what do you see as some key um, um, uh, issues and dreams that you have? And then Nic, maybe you could tell us the same thing. So let's start with your journey and where you're at now, and then I'll leave it to the two of you to talk.
Excellent. Thank you, John. A pleasure as always to engage with Philanthropy Impact. Nic, a real honor to have you with us. You're a big cheese in our space, so delighted that you could join. Maybe to answer John's question, and then I have my own questions for you, Nic. The reason I'm interested in the topic crypto for good is I think, having been in the industry now for some years, there's a lot that's being done to help people with either the technology, providing transparency in terms of blockchain, DLT, more broadly systematizing information in a way that can help people to see how, for example, philanthropy has a real impact in giving. But I also think that there's a story around the creation of wealth and innovation. And philanthropy is always at the cutting edge in terms of giving and doing good. But I think what we're able to do with these new technologies is tap into these trends and make sure that the next generation of entrepreneurs, the next generation of givers is aware of also that wider story of giving back.
So, Sean, why did you create Greengage?
I mean, as with any entrepreneur, we all have our own stories. Nic has his own. I'll ask him shortly. But for me, it was the desire to set up a platform, and Greengage is now live, where we can offer not just crypto companies but SMEs access to business accounts, to give them just normal accounts so they can move money around and do their thing and innovate, but also lending on a B2B basis, so we can get access for small businesses, including crypto companies, to lends so they can grow their business. I'm going to pass over to Nic because I'm mindful he's the star of the show. Nic, you're, as John mentioned, a co-founder of blockchain.com, which is one of the global leaders in the digital asset space. You're also the vice chairman, I gather. Could you tell us a bit about your journey and maybe that crypto for good theme as a backdrop?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. And thank you, John, for the opportunity to talk a little bit tonight about the role of giving and philanthropy. And also, I think the intersection of technology now with this is really a kind of important topic to bring forward. So I'll try and be brief. My background is kind of international. I grew up in Colorado. I was raised by my mother, and my father lived in South America. So I had to travel a lot to kind of keep up with the family. And I've always sort of had an entrepreneurial spirit. I started my first company when I was 16 with my best friends. We built websites, and we sold websites to all our friends' parents, from law firms to a company that made submarine sandwiches. And we didn't know much about deal making or business at all back then. The first deal we ever did with the sandwich company was lifetime free sandwiches if we built the online order management system for them. And it was great for about a year, but sadly, the sandwich company didn't survive for the long term. So that taught me a little bit about how to negotiate longer term deals. I then went to university, and then my first job actually out of university was to teach children at the Shanti Bhavan school in India. And it's an amazing school. They basically take Dali children from extraordinarily disadvantaged backgrounds and take care of them and put them through a curriculum, and they take care of them from very young age all the way through graduating to high school and into college. And Netflix has actually developed a documentary called Daughters of Destiny, specifically about the Shanti Bhavan school. And that was a really formidable experience when I was growing up, to teach computer science and creative writing to these young kids and watch them take on, with all their imagination, and doing all this incredible creativity work. And so after that, I started a company with some friends in the United States called Pipeline CRM. It was a customer relationship management software. which is something most people end up not wanting to learn a lot about, but needing to know a lot about once they start building a sales funnel for their companies. And so in this backdrop, though, I've always had a personal passion for economics, I would say politics and government and technology. And so when I first learned about an alternative financial system designed for the internet, I was very interested in this idea. And so this was really sort of coming out of the great financial crisis in 2008, 2009. Collateralized debt obligations really sort of blew up a variety of American financial institutions and led to a huge recession. And this is the economy that I was joining immediately graduating out of university. And so it was kind of out of the ashes of the great financial crisis that an alternative financial system was kind of hypothesized. It was sort of like, well, what if we took some of the principles of sound economics? What if we took some of the concepts of decentralized computing and we try to build a new type of financial system that adhered to the principles of the internet, open access, basically standard protocols, making it possible to send precious information from one place to another around the planet quickly with a high degree of reliability. And when I learned about, at first, Bitcoin, I became extremely interested in its potential to improve the state of the world. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of, we all wake up and we have our reasons for going to work, but we're all trying to sort of acquire some kind of money. We want money to maybe help raise a family or improve our homes or save up for an adventure or to invest in our communities. And so when you really think about the properties that money has and how money has sort of evolved over time, I think a really interesting question is, so what does the money of the future sort of really look like, and what properties does it have, and what features does that need in order to accommodate, growing a bigger pie for everybody? And so with the internet adoption expanding so generously around the world over the past 15, 20 years, it's really creating a whole bunch of disruptive opportunities against legacy business models. And so whether that was media being disrupted by platforms like Facebook and Twitter, or Netflix disrupting the movie industry, or Amazon disrupting the retailer, I think a great question is, like, how do fintechs and new emergent technologies disrupt the old world of finance? This guarded set of institutions that sort of controls a lot of access and custody of money in the world, decides who can trade with who, and in many ways prevents market access for regular people. And so at the end of the day, we founded blockchain.com over 10 years ago in the United Kingdom in a little village called York. We had a simple mission, which was to help make it easier for people in the world to transact with each other. And today, we still really hold true to that mission, which is to build tools and empower individuals to have more control over their money and wealth. Now, sometimes that's in the form of digital assets, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or now many others. It can also just be digital dollars or digital pounds. These are very powerful ideas because you have many parts of the world where people have been completely excluded from the financial system. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about the opportunities there, both in philanthropy, but just generally in giving access to a financial system that's more open, that's more accessible, and frankly, much more affordable for people to use and operate in. So as a short story, the company has raised nearly $1 billion over the past decade to help fuel our expansion. We have offices in half a dozen countries around the world. We have customers in over 200 countries, and really focus on two things. We have wallet services, which are basically software that you can install on your phone to send, receive, secure, trade, and exchange digital assets. You can think of it like a little bank account in your pocket. And we also have an institutional business. This serves high net worth individuals, family offices. We have an asset management offering and a custody offering as well. And so sort of two sides of the whole package, all available at blockchain.com.
But what's so exciting for me is you are at the cutting edge of blockchain.com in terms of building the new rails of, I think, financial services more broadly. And for those who are listening, blockchain.com is one of the biggest companies in this space globally. So great to have a UK kind of success story in terms of the origin as well. I appreciate, for the topic of crypto for good, we had a breakfast earlier this year where we had some really interesting people. You were very kindly and generously giving of your time to join us. And in addition to founding blockchain.com, you've done a few other things. I'd love to hear, you set up the Blockchain Commission for Sustainable Development and also skysthelimit.org. both of which have more charitable aspects to what they're doing, but also I think overlaps with your core job. Could you talk to those stories?
Yeah, Sean, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about those things because I care a lot about them. So really, there are two things in the world that motivate me. One is to develop a new relationship for individuals with how they manage their wealth. And at blockchain.com, a lot of the software and the capabilities that we develop are really mission aligned with that. The other, though, is that I think in order to really address some of the socioeconomic challenges that are reshaping our economies and the geopolitical landscape, we have to have a lot more entrepreneurs building goods and services that look a lot more like the composition of our society. And so that means having a hard think about how do we help early stage, first-time entrepreneurs practice entrepreneurship? How do we help them get access to mentorship, online and entrepreneurship education, and finally, access to capital? In many ways, if you come out of Cambridge or MIT or Stanford, you have so many advantages. If you put a few people together, you can likely go get some funding from friends and family, or go to a bank, or go to maybe a venture capitalist if you've got a good business plan. But most businesses don't actually look like that, although they're celebrated because of sometimes the extraordinary outcomes they achieve. The vast majority of businesses look a little bit more like the ones that we rely on every day in our neighborhoods and our communities. And so to me, really spending time with the next generation of entrepreneurs, making sure they have role models and making sure they have support and entrepreneurship, educational resources, and finally access to capital is hugely important. And so there's sort of two things I've involved with myself there. But most importantly is skyslimit.org. Skyslimit.org is a 10-year-old operating charity in the United States, so it's a 501c3 status. Here in the UK, we've also launched and have the Charity Commission's blessing to operate in the UK with full GDPR compliance. But what we've built at skyslimit.org is an online community where entrepreneurs and their allies can come together, meet online. We are really keen about forging powerful mentor-mentee relationships, and it's completely free for the entrepreneurs and the volunteers that serve. We've had over 75,000 entrepreneurs from around the world sign up. They've come to us from over 100 countries, but we really do focus on the US and the UK today. We match these entrepreneurs with volunteer mentors and advisors from amazing companies like Goldman Sachs, like Accenture, like BlackRock, and many more, who volunteer their time and talent to help train and educate and teach and mentor early stage entrepreneurs who have questions about branding or product market fit or how to price their product or idea. And then longer term, we support them by the tracking of various milestones. And then we collect all these things and report on the impact of that. And what's really different about Sky's Limit as a charity is just that everything's done through a digital delivery model. So this is pretty unique because it gives us, in a lot of ways, a really almost scientific approach to how we can improve the platform and the offering. We're making sure that our net promoter score is very high. Every time there's an interaction, people give each other a rating. And we track all of the interactions in a relational database so that we can serve up information like how many BIPOC entrepreneurs did we support this year, how many refugee entrepreneurs came through our program and were supported with funding. And these are things not only do we care about on the leadership team, but also our core funders, which include amazing companies like Accenture, Goldman Sachs, and others who really care about these things and want to support innovative solutions in the philanthropic space. I think philanthropy has sometimes, it's a viable critique of it, thinks in a very sort of methodical and is not risk-taking enough. And the whole point of philanthropy is to really plug the gaps in places the market is failing. And in my view, by using and harnessing technology, oftentimes a type of technology that has led to these extraordinary big platforms like a Facebook or a Twitter or otherwise, using those same technologies, though, to really address meaningful social problems and economic challenges, and using them for good, and then proving that good is really at the heart of what we're trying to do at Sky's the Limit. So we welcome any entrepreneurs out there who are looking to get started with their businesses. You can sign up for free, and we have a map on the skyslimit.org website. It'll show you all of the recent signups of entrepreneurs just like you from around the world that have an idea, that are looking to get some advice and support, and you can join the largest online community of emerging entrepreneurs from around the world to support your goals and dreams.
I had the privilege of attending one of the refugee entrepreneur events that you hosted, which was great fun. the winner received, I know, some support for their business, which was a coffee shop helping different refugees to come together and have a forum really to speak. Amazing stuff. And seeing these journeys, kind of how people got there and presented in front of a very kind of blue chip audience of people from traditional background. I'd like to maybe bring it back to the discussion around crypto for good and taking some of the themes we discussed at the breakfast. What for you does crypto for good mean? It's kind of an amorphous statement, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I think if you're gonna get involved in business or politics or be a doctor, and I think back on really the health services in many ways, like the Hippocratic Oath is so important. It's like, do no harm. And I think everyone should kind of have their own version of that for whatever their discipline is in life. And I think for my work in crypto, one is to demonstrate how this technology can immediately solve meaningful real world challenges, especially in the flow of funds and access to capital during emergency situations. So just in the past 12 months, I can provide some pretty salient examples of how crypto has responded to a geopolitical crisis in a meaningful way. And so when Russia invaded Ukraine, the Ukrainian government put a plea out to the world saying, hey, we need help. And sure, it took some time for the large Western democracies to put together aid packages and send resources to the Ukrainians. But overnight, they posted up a crypto receiving address saying, hey, we need some help. And over $100 million was immediately sent, crowdfunded by individual donors from around the world to the Ukrainian government overnight. And this is an example of how fast it can happen to basically immediately put money to ground to work in emergency situations. The same was true in Turkey during the earthquake and also in Morocco. And platforms like blockchain.com actually suspended trading fees for all those communities so that anyone could basically trade in and out of assets they needed to get money to their friends and family instantly. So whether it's global remittances, philanthropic donations, there are just a lot of use cases for crypto to really kind of empower receiving entities of funds, charities around the world, organizations like Wikipedia and many others, the American Red Cross, are all accepting crypto donations now because, one, they don't pay fees for accepting those donations, and they can accept them from anyone in the world who cares to make a donation to those causes. And to sort of demonstrate all of this, in 2014, I helped my university be the first university in the United States to accept a philanthropic donation. Now, at the time, they were like, oh, we don't know what this is. Like, how can we possibly accept a donation in digital money? What does that mean? Well, universities and charities are used to actually taking all kinds of sort of odd or bespoke donations, whether it's artwork or people sometimes give over their properties or things like that. So when I explained to them that they could choose to hold on to it, or they could trade it out and hold it into dollars, pounds, or euros, they got a lot more comfortable with that idea. So you don't have to keep your donation in a cryptocurrency if you don't want to. You can exchange these things. The markets are very liquid. And it's just another way of opening up a channel. And there are many very generous and philanthropic individuals in the cryptocurrency industry, which has proved time and time again, anytime one of these kind of global crises emerges, and you can demonstrate quickly how many people are willing to help their fellow humans around the world. And so those are just a few examples just from my personal experience, and also kind of contemporary examples of how crypto can be for good. But ultimately, it's about role models. It's about demonstrating the capabilities of these systems. That's also one of the reasons we did some work with the United Nations around the blockchain for sustainable development, which is really just to educate policymakers more around how these transparent financial fabrics are useful in supporting all kinds of the Millennium Development Goals and others. So these are just further examples of how the technology can be used for good. And I think we have to highlight these examples and continue to celebrate them, obviously, and keep putting our money where our mouth is if we want to make the world a better place, and demonstrate it with your money and your talents.
One of the things I'm really keen on Philanthropy Impact as an organization is it helps to give those in the industry of philanthropic giving the tools to know kind of what's best practice and can we learn from each other. You're obviously practicing what you preach. You're not just being an entrepreneur, but you're giving back properly and with these new technologies. I'd love to hear maybe for the educational side, for those that maybe don't come from a background where they know kind of the lingo or the phrases, what are some of the best tools you would see to help?
Yeah, if you're in the philanthropic space, I tend to recommend a platform called the Giving Block. They specifically work with charitable organizations to make it easier for their giving offices to basically accept Bitcoin or crypto. So if you have a website and you're a charity, you have maybe the option to receive a check. You might put your bank account information up there. You might have a credit card donation. There's no harm in putting up the option for a crypto donation too. And organizations like the Giving Block are set up to basically help integrate those payment solutions directly into your website. I mean, I think in terms of where to learn and follow more what's going on in the space, there's a couple good, or I would say relatively reliable media sites that you can follow. Coindesk.com is a decent one. City AM here in the UK has a crypto news feed that keeps up with local UK related news. Those are all really good resources. And so partially it's just becoming a little more fluent in the terms. And then also just, I would say practicing, 10 years ago, it was kind of maybe weird to accept donation via credit card. But most young adults now are very fluent with these things, and they're looking for ways to use crypto in their daily lives. That might be to buy things on the internet, will certainly be to support causes they care about. And so I would say integrating these things into your websites is a great place to start. And then also sharing podcasts and information as you learn about it with people that you think would be interested in it.
And in terms of maybe the listeners getting involved, if this is an area that's of interest, what's the best way for maybe people to find individuals like yourself who could help them to do that?
Yeah, so there are some, I would say podcasts are a great place to start actually as a sort of longer form format. And it took me a while to get into podcasts personally too. I thought it was just like new radio or something. But what I've realized is we've been sort of so inundated over the past 10 years with sort of short form information. It is really important to get a little bit beyond the headlines, whether those are the ones you read in the press or the ones that you're bombarded with in your social media feeds, and do a little bit more research and the deeper work. And there are some great podcasts. Laura Shin has one called Unchained. Blockchain.com supports a podcast that interviews guests about all these things. We did a whole Blockchain for Good segment this summer. We interviewed people from the Human Rights Foundation. They're big proponents of digital currencies. We followed an example of a very clever entrepreneur in the Netherlands that is using Bitcoin mining to heat up their tulip farms and have a whole sustainable energy production that's supporting investments in the green investments that they're doing there. So there are lots of great examples of this stuff. But at the end of the day, I think you need to practice basically using these tools. And so I'd encourage people to sign up for, a crypto service provider that has a long-term operating track record in the space. It has a history of supporting their customers well. And this has been complicated. There have been some famous examples of bad actors that have, basically blown up businesses. And so at the end of the day, there are good actors and bad actors in every industry. And that's true of finance. It's been true of our politics. And it's been true of tech companies. And you do need to work with ones that have a long-term operating track record. And that's pretty easy to figure out based on how long they've been doing what they said they were supposed to be doing.
I have the terrible role of saying that we only have a minute left.
Oh, John.
Nic, this is brilliant. And it's also quite inspiring what you're doing, but also what Sean's doing. So let's not let him get away with just saying,
I know, Sean.
So we're going to put on a live event in the new year where we can spend an hour and a half going into more and more detail about this whole topic. So crypto for good. So I'm going to say we could go over a minute or two, and I'm going to give each one of you 30 seconds to final words of wisdom. So Nic, I'll let you start, and then Sean can have the second last word.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think at the end of the day, when I think about what crypto for good means, it's about the potential to build a more fair and equitable financial system for the internet. And over the last 10 years, we've been putting a lot of the building blocks in place for that. AI is becoming an emergent powerhouse in our world where it's going to accelerate some of these trends. It's not a coincidence that an entire informatics asset class is emerging, and using those things to improve the state of the world is going to be extraordinarily important in order for millions and billions of people to adopt these things. And so there's a reason why Larry Fink is talking about this now. There's a reason why the largest asset allocators globally are taking a keen interest in the merging of old financial institutions and technology together. And ultimately, this is going to provide extraordinary opportunities, I think, both in the commercial, but also more importantly, longer term in the philanthropic space. And so to keep an eye on this, because it is definitely a trend setting space. And thanks to companies like Greengage and others that are pioneering the way for other companies to build on top of them, there'll be a lot of green pastures ahead, I think.
Well, our reason for being is to support people so they can do good with their money. And we focus on professional advisors and to high net worth and ultra high net worth people. And we've been in traditional financial market, but the whole crypto area and Bitcoin, et cetera, are really an important area too. So we're trying, that's why we had the private breakfast. That's why we're doing this kind of thing, to sort of get more involved and have some influence in those areas. So Sean, you've been sitting there so quiet, which is extremely unusual. Final words to you, and then we say goodbye.
I think there's a very good question about how do we bring trust into this space. It's a new space. As Nic mentioned, there's been a few bad apples, but I think the way we bring trust is threefold. One, education. So events like this, where we get to know kind of from each other and learn kind of what is best practice. How do we build lasting businesses? I think two, I do think regulation is a part of that, but standards more broadly around how do we, once we understand what the rules of the game are, how do we operate in an international context and nationally, where you can see trusted actors behave over time. And three, I think transparency, and that's something that for me is so interesting about the technology. And Bitcoin is an example. You can see every single interaction that a particular Bitcoin has ever made. And that level of transparency it's not just in traditional finance. We see point to point, you see the ecosystem or cloud with whom people engage. And I think that kind of thing for me is very powerful to know, is this somebody that I'm dealing with that deals with good people? Or do they deal with people that maybe are a little bit too hot to handle? And that helps firms like Greengage to decipher who are good clients to have, in addition to all the traditional sources. So it's not just a new source of money, so to speak, but it's a new way of understanding and not just reducing friction or removing inefficiencies, but adding additional layers of understanding where that transparency can help us to resolve some of these issues around trust.
That's quite fascinating. I saw us move from slide rules to calculators to computers and now to Bitcoin. So it's just accepting that there's brilliance in any of these new innovations. So thank you very much, Nic and Sean, for doing this, and wonderful. Thank you very much.